Hi, I'm Sam.
And I'm Felicia.
Welcome to our very first episode of the Bootleg Book Club.
I am the youngest of 3 daughters, and I'm a recent graduate, and I'm really happy to just have this opportunity to read more and talk more about books with my sister.
I'm the oldest of 3, and I just graduated from law school, and I'm excited to do something new and explore my reading hobby with my sister, who is also my best friend, on social media platforms.
That was really sweet. So, to start off, we are reading Yinka, Where is Your Husband by Lizzie Damilola Blackburn.
So, we just wanted to go into a little bit about the author. So, Lizzie was born and raised in London. She is British Nigerian, and it's very evident in this book. This is her first novel, and I'm actually very excited to hear more of her voice actually over time, because I thought this was a unique and interesting perspective. That's how I felt throughout the book.
Right, that's cool. Just for kind of a book look, the book is about 373 pages.
It went by fast.
Yes, it goes by fast, but it is pretty thick. And just a little bit more about it. Yinka is feeling a lot of pressure to get married by her mom, her aunties, and seeing her little sis become pregnant and other people in her family kind of going on to these other milestones connected to marriage. So that's where we are, just reading her story about love and trying to find her way in her family.
Absolutely. So, to kind of expand on the whole book look, what did you think about the cover? Because I loved it. I loved the fact that she had natural hair, and I loved just these women like behind her, and you could kind of see that they kind of represent like different, I guess, like different generations. Like, I feel like you could see the millennial, you could see the traditionalist. How did you feel?
I agree. I love the colors in it. It's so bright. It's so lovely. I love how they're at the top of her head. So you could definitely, when you're reading the book, you could see that these are women that she's thinking about, basically. Her thoughts are consumed and really imprinted by these women in her life.
Agreed. So, yeah. Agreed. So, our next segment and the next thing that we want to talk about, we're going to call Bookmark. And it's where we're going to talk about either our favorite part or favorite quote. And we're not going to get into spoilers. We'll tell you when we are going to basically spoil the book. So right now we're just giving our favorite part or favorite quote without any spoilers. So I'll let you go first.
Okay. Yeah. So mine is on page 73, if you really care. And it's the midnight sky is just as beautiful as the sunrise. This was just, it pops up a few times, but this was the first time it pops up in the book, and it was just so beautiful. It's actually the main character, Yinka's dad, telling her how beautiful she is and trying to remind her to love yourself and love the color of your skin, because Yinka is darker skin. So, yeah, that was my first love in this text for just quotes.
I had a few, but one that I'll read right now is, "You see, I'm responsible for my happiness." She presses a hand to her chest. "I would have lived my life disappointed if I had not known that happiness is a choice. Do you know what would be even more disappointing? Living a life that you feel pressured into." And that's when one of Yinka's aunts is talking to her just about life in general. And I just felt that was really important, especially with a book like this where you have different generations giving their opinions on things. And I don't know, I just was like, yeah, like, but at the end of the day, your happiness is your responsibility. Your happiness is yours. And you have to do what makes you happy, not necessarily always following what generations before you are saying. Heed their advice, take in their wisdom, but I think it's important to do what's best for you.
Right. Totally agree. So my second one I have is, "I am who I say I am." That was just really nice. It's just an affirmation that Lizzie, I keep saying Lizzie, it's Yinka, sorry, that Yinka is telling with her best friend, Nana. So they say it to each other, they say it for each other, and it's really empowering to have that word or phrase for yourself, when you're down there, to pick yourself back up, to stand up basically and say, I am who I say I am, and not letting others define you and say who you are.
Right. My other favorite one is actually Nana saying this again, and she says, well, that's the way God made you. That explains things as long as you're happy. And Nana is basically describing a situation that she's in and what her parents' response was. And I thought that was so very powerful because I think faith is a theme in this book, but more so than that, I thought it was really powerful to have that be a parent's response. Like, I accept you as you are, and also just knowing that, like, beyond accepting you as you are, I just feel like knowing that, yeah, God did make me this way, and believing that He's given me the tools to be happy, and He didn't make a mistake in making me, and yeah. I thought it was really powerful for a parent to be saying that because I think it also showed how older or more traditional generations can be supportive of their children.
Right. Very nicely said. The next one I have is actually from Yinka's mom. So it was in a voice note, just like a voicemail, but don't be suffering in silence. And that was just another nice reminder, sometimes we have moments in life where we are suffering and you tend to just keep it to yourself. And this was a really big moment for Yinka to try not to keep it to herself. I think she was holding a lot of things in throughout the book and trying to hide things away. And now it's like this okay and insurance even from your parent to not suffer alone.
Right. Okay, so let's kind of move on to our next segment, which we're going to be calling a POV, or point of view, and where we're going to touch on lightly our favorite or least favorite characters. Do you want to start, or you want me to start?
You can start.
Okay.
I'm very interested.
I think we have the same least favorite character, but my favorite character was probably Auntie Blessing. First of all, I loved her name. And yes. I think that was very significant that she was called Blessing, which I think we should talk more about in the in-depth part.
Right.
But I just loved that she was a career woman and she made no apologies for that.
Right.
And I think, again, going back to one of my favorite quotes, I think she was one of the characters that took the most responsibility for where she was in life and really owned where she was at in life and her own happiness. And I just really appreciated her character. Right. It really spoke to me.
Yeah. I really did like her character too. I would say my favorite character though is Nana, which is Yinka's best friend. And I was just really drawn to her because she has such ambition. She's starting out her career. She's trying to really go for something she's passionate about as a fashion designer. She's not trying to seek what other people have planned for her. She's really rooted and connected to who she is. And then she's a really good friend to Yinka.
Oh, she's a very, very good friend.
Patient, just everything I can think of in a best friend, where it's fun, she's really kind to her, she's really motivating her to do things that she wants to do, and things that will even be kind of outside of her comfort zone. She kind of pushes Yinka to be a better person.
Agreed.
So all of that, I just felt very comforting in a person, so that's why I picked Nana.
Nice. And our least favorite character being
Ola. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Ola is one of Yinka's cousins, and I think there was, I don't know, there was just a lot of animosity flowing off of her, and I feel like in the same way where I felt like Auntie Blessing took a lot of ownership or responsibility for her life and her happiness, I feel like Ola was complete opposite, and she did not take responsibility or ownership of her life.
Yeah, I think Ola was really confused and had a lot of moments of doubt and misery in her life, and it's like she was trying to bring Yinka down with her into that. Or blame Yinka for everything in her life, which is just, it caused tension basically. So it was just seeing that tension around Yinka, around the family. It was just really hard to read, and it was just, that ended up just being a very sore spot for me, and just me not liking Ola. And even in the end, I was just like, I don't know, I think I need more growth here.
Well, I think at the end I felt like everybody is growing.
Yes.
But I think with books, you kind of you leave off at a certain point, right? Like at a certain point, the story ends. But in our imaginations, we can say that there was more growth probably happening, which I think is a fair statement.
Right. Totally agree.
All right. Well, what's coming next is the in-depth deep dive, and we're definitely going to be talking more about the story. So just going to go ahead and say, spoiler alert, if you haven't read the book yet, pause here, go finish reading, and then come back. Or if you just don't plan on reading the book and you're just interested in learning more about the book, continue listening, I guess. But let's get into it. So, what resonated with you or didn't resonate with you? And what do you think people will like about this book, and what do you think people will not like about this book?
I will start off with what I think people won't like with this book. I think something I disliked, definitely I saw you disliking it too, but Yinka, it's like one bad thing after the other happens in her life.
She was down bad.
And she doesn't get anything to look forward to. She doesn't get any wins until the very end. And it was just really rough to read that, especially for a romance novel, because I came here to be happy, to see love.
I definitely thought it was going to be light and airy. And it is light in comparison to like a horror book or a thriller or something like that. It is light. But there was definitely some heavy moments too, and definitely some moments where you're like, dang, like, can she catch a break?
Right. But I did really love how I really connected to Yinka. I think Lizzie does a really good job writing and developing her character. I felt so connected to her. So many things that Yinka had for her, I was going through in my life, or I felt at one point.
For sure.
So I think that's something I really loved.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think any black woman, specifically any dark-skinned black woman, will definitely see themselves in Yinka and appreciate like the different like things that she's going on in life, right. And like they'll definitely be able to connect with her in some way. I agree that I think people won't like. I think those parts were kind of tough to read. Like, dang, something else bad happened. Like either like from losing her job to the guy that she was going after not being interested in her, yes. To a guy even telling her you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl. Mm-hmm. Like it was just one thing after the other. And then it didn't help that her family, like the familial pressure, right? Especially in a traditional family. Where's your husband? Literally praying over her to have a husband. Like when they're supposed to be celebrating the sister's baby shower, mm-hmm. or celebrating the cousin's engagement, it's like, oh, but we gotta pray for Yinka because she still don't got a man. Like, can we just celebrate why we're here in the first place?
Right. It was just a lot. It just felt like too much, where it was just, there's nothing good going on. It's a very toxic environment. Yes, and I felt for Yinka there, especially like you said, being a woman, being a dark-skinned woman, having this feeling of I always have to worry about what others think of me in relation to a man. And it was yes. I can't be an individual person at all.
I think something else was that when you start reading about Yinka, you're like, oh my gosh, she's so successful. Like, and I think this kind of goes back to the setting and like how Lizzie is from England. Yinka went to Oxford. She works at like a really prestigious bank.
Right.
She like has her own home. Mm-hmm. She drives a Mercedes. Like you just feel like, oh, she really has her life together. She has everything going for her. But all anyone sees is that she doesn't have a husband, and that really sucks, I think.
And she's only 31, and I feel like that's really young. But then others think, oh, you're too old.
Right.
But it's just like this is such an age to go travel, to do whatever you want, and it's just
I think that's definitely a generational thing, though. Like, I think that's absolutely a generational thing, for sure.
True.
Yeah. So, what did you think about her different dates? Okay. Let's start with Alex. Alex is the guy that Yinka's aunt sets her up with at a church. Yeah. And Yinka and Alex start going back and forth about Nigerian food and Nigerian customs. Mm-hmm. And I think I would say their first official date is when she cooks him dinner, or would you call when they volunteered together almost like a date?
Volunteering, kind of. The thing is, they're not dates, but I just didn't like him from the beginning. I'll say that.
They're dates to Yinka.
They're dates to Yinka. I think the most official one would be when she cooked for him, when it wasn't even her cooking.
It was Nana's cooking.
Who, like, supported her in that. But she just wanted to impress Alex, right? And the reason why she wanted to impress Alex is because he's connected to Nigerian culture, and he wants real Nigerian food. He's like, we need to go to the real church, all of these things. So that's the first thing, where it's like, I think the first meetup at church, kind of, I saw that as like, oh, this is like their first like meet cute type of thing. Mm-hmm. And it just went downhill from there.
I agree. And I would also say, like, I think for me what was difficult from the beginning, and actually let me take a step back. Before we even got into the dates, I should have explained that Yinka's going on dates because her cousin's getting married, and she wants to have a date to the wedding because her ex-boyfriend is going to be there with his fiance.
Right.
So, yeah. So she's like on this mission to get dates, and she literally like sets out a game plan almost as if she's basically doing a project management like at work.
Yeah. She's a very type A person. She has her sticky note. She has everything aligned to the action she needs to do, what she needs to see if there's progress with getting a date. It was very detailed. I mean, the inner organized person I am loved it. But again, that was part of something that was causing her to suffer, and she kept it silent. She didn't share it or tell anybody about this plan.
For sure. Yeah, so to get back into Alex, I felt like what was difficult for me was like she wasn't initially interested in Alex. I think or even the idea of Alex, she only went after it because she decided she needed a date. And I think from there, it kind of set the tone that this could potentially not go well.
Right.
I didn't mind Alex so much until I realized, I don't know, like he just seemed to be so opposite Yinka. Like Yinka is not really entrenched in Nigerian culture, although she is Nigerian, but like he made fun of the type of food that she likes to eat.
Right.
Just because it wasn't necessarily Nigerian. And I just felt like, well, they're already opposites. Like, how is this going to work? Like, they went to two totally different types of churches. She only went to his church to talk to him. And it's just, I don't know. I just felt like it set a really bad tone for me anyway.
Yeah, I think it was just with him joking with her, but it kind of started her having to change herself. And that's where it's just like, if you're changing yourself this much for a guy, cut it. It's just not going to work.
Agreed. So next was Derek. but I wouldn't call him a date. He just confessed that he liked her, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I actually wanted her to be with Derek. I thought this was perfect. They're both Christian. Mm-hmm. He was very nice, always willing to help her out at every event that they ended up being at together.
Yeah.
And he was actually putting forth effort, unlike Alex. And I was like, why aren't you going for him? Like, I didn't get it. And I didn't like that.
Yeah. I think it was just the trope of he was the good guy. You know, the nice guy who was just there. He was just so available. So I think that was something that kind of threw Yinka off as somebody that she didn't have to necessarily work for.
I don't know. I was embarrassed for her. I was like, I'm tired of this
right?
with Derek because this is getting embarrassing. Just be with who likes you is honestly how I was starting to feel.
Yeah, I think she was a bit mean to Derek, though. Like, she literally ran out on him when he was trying to get her food because she dropped food. So she had.
Yeah. And then who was after that?
Donovan.
Okay. Donovan I thought was interesting because right away I was like, y'all are unequally yoked. He is annoying and pack it up, sir. Like, why are you here?
No, Donovan wasn't that bad. So Donovan was a frenemy of Yinkas because she and him worked at a nonprofit a little bit, and then now he is back in her life because he still works with the nonprofit. He realized that's like his true passion and that's what he wants to work in. So Yinka was trying to impress Alex and go volunteer where she meets Donovan again. Right. So, but Donovan was just, I think at least he was being honest with Yinka. And kind of pointing certain things out. Yes, he's a little rough around the edges, you know, maybe he went too far, but he always apologized or tried to reel it in. I think he did make a few changes, you know.
I don't know, but I started to suspect that her and Donovan might be a thing when I realized that at least they both eat the same type of food and they both saw each other at a chicken takeaway spot, which I assumed, because I don't really know about like what takeaway was supposed to be, but I just assumed like almost like fast food for what we would call like fast food, basically.
Yeah.
But I just was like, this is starting to look like at least they can be their true selves together, like at least when they were in the park and that sort of thing.
No, I think it was really when he started supporting and trying to help her get back to nonprofit, because I think he really did see that the corporate world had its toll on her and him, and he was trying to really help her. He was like, send your resume, your CV, and, you know, I will help you. You know, I think that kind of solidified. It's just like, oh, I think Donovan's about to make it to the end.
Yeah, I think so too. But I'll be honest, I wasn't really rooting for him, and I think I actually went to your room at a point and was like, can she just be with Derek? All of this is too much. Donovan is not the one. Pack it up. Let's go.
Right.
Yeah. And the one person that I don't know if he's worth mentioning, but maybe it might actually I was going to say Marcus.
Okay.
But which I'm like, maybe not worth mentioning. But then again, it's like, I think it kind of emphasized her faith in this instance. Marcus is a guy that she meets online. He's a white guy that she goes out with. And on their second date, he basically tries to have sex with her. And she's like, no, I'm a virgin. And he takes serious offense to that, which I was like, first of all, it's only your second date anyway. And then I was just like, if anything, don't take offense and be honest. Because he made it seem like he could be okay with it.
Right.
And then later on, he basically ghosts her.
That's what I was going to mention.
But I will say that Yinka kind of... Don't call someone 15 times. That's all I'm going to say about that. I don't think she should have had to call 15 times to get the hint.
Yes, that is true, but I see where she's coming from. It's just like, respond. We've been texting, we've been calling, you know, we had a first date, and you did say, hey, we could talk again. So it's just
right.
From that impression, it's just, and at this point, this was towards the end of the book, she was in a very desperate, mode to get a date for the wedding. So I could see, or just find some type of validation, because she was kind of clinging to hope when he said, oh yeah, that's fine, you're a virgin.
Right.
They went back to cuddle and, watching TV, and it was just like, he just gave her too much false hope.
I can agree with that. I can definitely agree with that. I just feel like overall, at the end of the day, don't be upset with someone's decisions. Just figure out if it's going to work for you or not, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't have his name written down. I don't know if you do, but homeboy who hooked her up and she ends up FaceTiming him. Emanuela. One, okay, I don't know why she was FaceTiming him, but I still think he kind of did her wrong. Yeah.
Agreed.
He said, one, he's like, oh, you're not the girl I thought you were, because, they grew up together, and he thought she was somebody else, but then he was like, oh, I thought you were the light-skinned girl. And he was just like, well, you're still pretty for a dark-skinned girl.
That cut so deep. It cut.
Right.
And it was truly relatable, and it's so upsetting and so discouraging that dark-skinned black girls go through that. You don't like me because of my complexion, something that I can't even help, you know what I mean? And I just feel like we know that it's because of beauty standards and Eurocentric beauty standards that have been uplifted and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, you would hope that one of your own wouldn't fall into the trap of that, basically.
Exactly.
It was definitely heartbreaking.
It was heartbreaking, and it just felt wrong, even where it's she's 31, so he was probably around that age too. So it's just you're doing this, and
at your big age.
Yeah, as an adult, I feel I remember those moments being young, and it's just you could say, okay, they're just little boys, but it's just no, this is a grown man, and it's just
right.
This is sad.
Yeah, it was definitely sad. Agreed. So, were there any topics or themes that you wanted to expand on? Because I had a couple that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
One thing was hair. I think hair was a big thing in the book. Whether it be natural hair, weave. I felt like wigs, right? I felt like it kind of spoke to, are you changing yourself because this is actually something you genuinely like? Or are you changing yourself for a man? Right. And I think that was definitely important to consider. I don't think there's anything wrong with weave, wigs. I'm literally wearing, basically crochet locks right now. But I think it does matter if you're doing it for yourself versus a man.
Yeah, exactly. And
or just versus someone that you're trying to get the attention of.
Yep. And pretty much Yinka was doing it for a man, because the big thing was that she used to have long hair. Right. And she cut her hair.
Right.
And first, everybody in her family was just like, oh, you cut your hair. And it was the tone of, why did you cut your hair? Especially from her mom and her Aunt Debbie. They were just like, why would you do this?
Right.
And it was just you were so beautiful. And it was just
the idea that hair length equals beauty was wow. But it is something that is true, I think, not only in probably African culture, but I would say in our own Caribbean culture as well, that it kind of ties itself almost closely to colorism, basically.
Right. Yeah, definitely in Caribbean culture, especially when it comes to the weave and making sure you have that nice, pretty hair. And that's what's going to help you apparently get a man. And it was
apparently.
Really?
Yeah. I definitely thought that was interesting that she put that in the book, and I think it spoke to the type of culture that she comes from, and I think it kind of helps it make it all more real and relatable again, though.
Right. I would say one big theme I was looking into was family dynamics. Going back to, you have cousins who grew up as best friends. So what do you think of the relationships between the cousins, which is Rachel and Ola, and then her little sister, you know, those relationships.
Yeah, I felt like with the cousins, I definitely thought that was interesting. I think when you grow up in a big family, I think that's natural to happen, right? Like your cousins kind of become your best friends, and I definitely identify with that experience as well. But I think in this instance, I felt like everyone was just trying too hard. Like I think at a certain point, either you gel or you don't gel, I think is kind of what happens. I think, I just think they were trying too hard, and I think they also probably let their parents' opinions and views influence them a little bit too much. Like I think they started to care about what their parents thought a little bit too much and let that affect their relationship, and I don't think that should have happened.
Yep. And that's where I'm at. I definitely think that they were really close and still could have been really good friends. And they are by the end of the book. But it was really just the influence of parents, I think, that kind of went in, specifically the aunt who was comparing them. And that happens. And it's just like, what do you do? And it's just like, where it's like, oh, your cousin did this. Your cousin graduated early. Your cousin went to this college. And your cousin's doing this job. And it's just like, really? It's just like, yeah, I appreciate that. Like, go do your thing, but I am my own person.
Yes, we are our own person. I think that is so important to remember, too.
Right.
Yeah, agreed. Also, another theme I feel like was faith, which I thought was really interesting and I liked because, I don't know, I haven't really read that many books, like, or romance books that center around faith this way, I think. And also the different ways that faith can be expressed. And you don't have to go to church for 3 hours to be a faithful person, I think was one thing I saw. And you don't have to push yourself to be that type of person. And I think, I don't know, I just thought that was a nice point.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really liked how the dynamic between Yinka and Donovan, when Donovan is not a believer and he was he tried to at first really go at it or with Yinka of going back and forth. And Yinka kind of stepped up and said, I'm not interested in a debate. You know, you are interested in debating this. I'm interested in a conversation, And she was just like, not even a discussion type of thing where it's just like heated it could get, but it's like, let's just talk. And then she was saying she's not interested in conversion, I'm not here to convert you. And I thought that was big too for Faith, because there is a lot about, having to convert or tell people about Jesus. But she has a moment where she says it's really about your heart and what you are ready to believe, So if your heart is not there, I cannot convert you. So I really liked how she did not put any pressure on Donovan to convert. And, in the end, that's what helped. Her just sharing her own faith and saying, I'm faithful to God, opened his heart to say, oh, I'm willing to go to church.
I also think faith in general should not be a debate anyway. I think it's like, this is what I believe, this is why I believe it, and we can share our points of view. But I actually don't see any reason for faith to be a debate. Yeah, this is not school. This is what I personally believe. This is my choice, and I can, inform you about that, but I don't think there's any reason to be debating about it, especially something so personal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the other theme I have would be work and career, looking into that and how our lives is pretty much surrounded by that. You have Auntie Blessing, you have Yinka, who just lost her job, and then you have her work friends and how they kind of mix in. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting. Her blending her family and friends with her work friends. I was just like, I could never. I really could never.
I thought that was huge.
It ended up working out, I would say, pretty okay. But I just, the whole time, I was like, I could never imagine blending, all these different parts of my life together. But I also felt like it was encouraging to see that overall, they all cared for Yinka in their own way, and they all wanted to help her in their own way. And they all respected her and her decisions,
Exactly.
even if they were different from her. I really liked that, too.
Right.
Yeah. I think overall, though, I think it also showed, like, you can be successful in a career, but not happy in a career. And I think that's really important to consider because we are at work, like, for a large amount of our lives.
Right.
And even if you have no dream job, like, I don't think you have to be miserable at work either. And I think it's worth figuring out what will make you happy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I was really honed into the idea of working when she was looking for a job and the interview process. And just, there was a whole chapter of her pretty much rejection. So it was just, at that point, she's just like, when am I going to be happy again? You know?
Right.
It was this sense of she's trying to contact people and say, you know, I really need this job and I'm looking for a corporate job at this point. She wasn't really interested in switching yet to nonprofit. So it was going to, I guess the next theme, it would be just like, it took a toll on her mental health, you know?
Right.
So it was just, like you were saying, there's a difference between success and happiness. And she just was not happy. And then trying to go for it again didn't make her happy either.
Right. Agreed. And I also think something else, because you mentioned or touched on mental health, I think our happiness needs to stop being connected to things. Like, we need to start looking more into ourselves, or maybe even reaching out to our faith, but, like, work should not be the source of happiness. A husband should not be the source of happiness. Your happiness has to come from yourself. It can touch on your faith or connect to your faith, but it cannot be, like, on these other external things. That's what I think.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I loved how mental health was another theme in this book. I love that, I would say, like, our millennial generation, was zillennial, I think.
I'm a zillennial.
What you said the other day. The zillennial generation is just so forthcoming about going to therapy. But I thought it was interesting that Yinka seemed resistant to it, and it was like, it kind of gave me the vibes of those people that are like, Jesus is enough for me, like, I don't need to go to therapy. And like, Jesus made therapists. Like, I think if you need the therapy, go. It helps so much to, I think, talk out those feelings and really try to understand or learn different coping mechanisms to help with the experience that you're having. Whatever it may be, like, whatever may be hindering you from living a full, happy life. Like, I think it's worth figuring out what it is, doing the work, and figuring out those coping mechanisms. I think it's totally worth it. And I was concerned there for a second, like, Yinka, you should definitely do this. But again, overall, I'm glad that it made its way into this book, because I think it really touches on where we are as a society and as a generation as far as millennials and zillennials.
Right. I really liked how therapy was approached in this book, where, one, you have Donovan, who had a sweetheart, a high school sweetheart, you know, that he thought he was going to marry, and he didn't. And then he said, you know, that brought me in such a position, I needed to go to therapy. And Yinka was just so shocked by it. And he was just like, she was thinking that he went to therapy probably for something, like a bigger, you know, issue in his life. But it's really just, that was enough, you know?
That was enough, yes. It could be any reason to go.
Any reason. And it was just, it was because it was a simple breakup that happened. And, you know, the breakup happened, like, years ago, but it's still, I'm working through these feelings. And even that was mentioned in the book, it's okay to feel. It's okay to have feelings.
Right.
So that's why it's important not to suffer in silence, you know, even if it's with a therapist, go and share those feelings and making sure you're dealing with them. And then her best friend, Nana, was talking about therapy, and she told Yinka, you need to go to therapy because you are stealing my clothes, you are changing who you are, and you are not living by our mantra of saying who you are.
Right.
So I can't help you anymore.
Right.
You know, I think that's where it was coming from, and I think that's why I really love Nana, where she was just like, I think I've done everything I can for you, and now I'm going to have an intervention for you to go do the rest of the work you need to do.
I think that's another important factor, though, is like no matter how much you love a person and no matter how much you're willing to listen to a person, sometimes you're not necessarily equipped with the tools to help that person, and
Right.
It's okay to bring in a professional.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would agree with all of those things. I think one lighthearted, funny thing that I was brought back to was The Shape of Butt, which I thought was hilarious. I think it did go a little bit towards like just the way you see yourself. And it was obvious that it was something that bothered Yinka, and I thought it was funny because it's like I definitely had those moments like, oh, I wish this was thinner, or I wish this was, thicker or whatever. But I loved that even though body image was brought up in different ways, at the end you really got to see Yinka's confidence by the way that she ended up walking in Nana's fashion show as a model, and it just really brought, I think, everything together for me. Like, she really is showing growth in every area, from being okay with her singleness, being okay with her body type. Like, I think it just really wrapped up a lot of different things nicely.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it also, not only the idea of body image, or it was a nice quirk of Yinka's, to kind of see other people and say, oh, you have a J butt, it kind of just reminded me like, she's just a regular black girl,
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I felt like I really could connect with that. And so seeing that growth where she kind of went to the fashion show and she modeled, it was just like seeing that you could overcome these things, about your body, or just having certain body issues when you do, because you do notice things on other people. Right, and it wasn't something that was denied in this book. It was something that was, written about and exposed, and it was just shared in a beautiful way.
Totally agree. Well, I think we've definitely talked a lot about the book. We've definitely spoiled a lot about this book. So I hope if you've made it this far that you actually did read the book, or just were interested in learning more about it. And there's still definitely more little details in here where I think you would still enjoy the book, even if you haven't finished it, if you went and read it now, even knowing everything that we've talked about. Please put in the comments below what you thought of the book, how you felt. Do you agree with any of our opinions? Do you disagree with any of our opinions? But to get the official review and rating, you'll have to go to our Instagram at the Bootleg Book Club.
Yeah.
Awesome. So make sure you follow, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and continue following us for more. We'll see you next time. And read, believe, and love.